right, let's get started, everybody. Hey, great to be with you, and it's going to be a good day. Hey, so today is a real important day in regards to your life. And I'm just looking here just very quickly, and look, we've got actually a pretty good sized group, but not a huge group. So I want you to just think about for a moment. I have a series of questions that I just wanted to ask you, and they're pretty simple ones. Before I jump into those questions, though, just a few housekeeping. One, having the opportunity to be able to interview Tina Hare tomorrow at our morning ascent. Got Rob Oakey, of course, on Wednesday, and we've got some great stuff lined up. These coaching sessions, oftentimes we can focus on listing presentations, buyer presentations. We can focus on closing skills. We can talk about all the different skill sets that are necessary. And yet, what I've realized is that everything is a skill set. But if you're not attending the morning ascents, if you're not attending the areas in which you can use to improve the way in which you communicate, I'm going to encourage you to do that. Today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on what you would call the rigidness or the solidarity of skill sets like, objection handling, closing, presenting. But I'm going to encourage you to make sure that you're participating in that. And even if you can't participate at the time that that's being done, participate after. Go back and listen. Go back and listen to those role plays. Go back and listen and just glean just that next level in relationship to your business. So here's the question. Let's just jump into this. Here's the question. What do I want? So write that down for me if you can. Take out a clean piece of paper, write down, what do I want? One of the great tragedies of humanity is that they seem to never figure out what they ultimately want. So they kind of spin their wheels constantly, not really figuring out what they want. Now we could say this is, goal setting. We could talk about the fact of improving the goals. We could talk about how we really achieve goals, but I'm not going to get into the depth of that today. I just, in its most simple form, I want to ask you, what do I want? And what I would love you to do, I'm just going to give you 30 seconds here, and I want you to write down 5 things that you'd want to have happen in the next 12 months. In the next 12 months, write down 5 things that you would like to see happen, 5 things that you want in the next, basically 12 months, or you could even say the rest of this year, whatever works for you. All right, take 30 seconds to do that just very quickly. Five things you want. Don't overcomplicate it. Just write down 5 things you want. If you're driving and listening to this, at least, some level, be thinking about what you want. Okay. So I hope that you've participated in this and you've written down 5 things that you want, 5 goals, objectives, whatever you want to call them. Here's what I promise you. And not that I'm a psychic, but I will bet you that basically take the 5 things, 3 out of the 5 are going to deal with 3 core areas of your life: the economics of your life, the relationships in your life, and your health and your vitality. Whenever I do this, sometimes I'll say, hey, write down 3 things you want. And I'll say, hey, I can bet you I can guess 2 out of 3 of them and what they're about. And people will say, how are you going to be able to know what they're about? Because we all are driven to improve in those 3 areas of our lives. In fact, if you look real closely at every single info commercial, you look at every single advertisement, it's always about improving a relationship, how to become more wealthy, and of course, how to create a better relationship with the people that you love. Look, in the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Even the car commercials, they don't talk necessarily about the actual car. They talk about how great the memories will be, the relationships you will create, right? Advertisers are smart. They get that. But if you don't get really clear on what you want, you're going to make decisions on a day in and day out basis that make absolutely no sense for the future of your life. So look, if I was to give a total, like, hey, this is the top of the mark, this is what we're supposed to do, like this is how you figure out life, I'm first and foremost going to tell you to figure out what you want. Now, in the end, There's going to be goals. There's going to be stepping stones to getting there. So I want to just visit with you about a few of those things in the next 20 minutes that we have together. So write this down. What is my story? Right? What is my story that I'm telling myself? So you have these goals, these objectives, these places you want to go in life, whether it be in, traveling somewhere, helping someone, doing something, buying something, driving something, living in something, investing in something, the health, the vitality, the relationship. All of these areas are areas where you've set these goals, these objectives. The question then is, what's the story that you're telling yourself today? What's the story? So I've said for years that so many of us need to divorce the old story and marry a new one. What is your story? See, I can remember years ago, I'd meet a person, and this was in my 20s, this is 30 years ago, right? And I would say to someone, hey, what's your story? And when I first started doing it, it was kind of a joke, like, hey, what's your story? Like, hey, buddy, what's your story? And I would just say it. People would look at me puzzled, like, what do you mean, what's my story? And as life went on, I started to realize that we each are telling ourselves a story. Look, where you are economically is because you tell yourself the story. Where you are with your health is because you tell yourself the story. Where you are in the relationships that you have, you tell yourself a story. You might be pointing at the person in your intimate relationship, then saying they're the problem. But either way, maybe they're the problem, you're the problem, but you start crafting a story. Well, if we specifically focus on the game of real estate and trying to be a absolute solid salesperson who, has the ability to tackle and take on things, the reality is that it's all about your story. What's the difference of the person who sells 15 homes or the person who sells 25? I can tell you it's not their luck. It's the story they tell themselves. We each have a temperature gauge inside of ourselves. And that temperature gauge is what rules our lives. If we make too much money, it's crazy, but you might be that person who sabotages it and brings the temperature down because it's just too hot. And you say, oh, no, I would never do that. Really? Then why are you not earning more money than you are today? We each have a temperature gauge. We each have a story. We each tell ourselves things that are true and not true, things that feed us and build us, and things that tear us down and truly damn us in regards to our progression. The story that you tell yourself about a for sale by owner, the story about an expired, the story about just listeds, just souls, the stories about prospecting in general, the story you tell yourself in relationship to why you do or don't work with your sphere of influence, the story that you tell yourself in relationship to how much you can prospect, can't prospect, how much you should prospect, when you prospect, why you prospect, how you don't like prospecting, how you do love prospecting. Everything is a story. And you say, well, George, but what if I like my story? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the answers to the test. I'm going to challenge you, going to invite you, I'm going to encourage you to craft a story that serves your life the way you want it to. You may say, what do you mean? I can just make up my stories? Haven't you been making up stories your whole life? All of a sudden you make up a story of what you think is true, and all of a sudden you figure out, oh my gosh, it's not true. How many stories have you told yourself of someone saying this, someone doing that, someone saying this, someone saying that, someone in your life that you thought did one thing, but then they did another? How certain were you? How sure you were of the story that someone took something, did something, or you didn't, but you didn't lose it. All of a sudden you find out, wait a second here, I'm the one who misplaced my item. But you were telling yourself a wholly different story that someone else moved your stuff. Every day of every week of every moment, you are crafting a story that either serves you or damns you. What's the story you're telling yourself? What is the story that you tell yourself in regards to scripts and dialogues? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Here, look, the story is the voice you're hearing in your head right now. The story is the story that you tell to either improve your life or to tear it down. Your story is the story you tell yourself that allows you to excel beyond what you ever maybe even thought possible, versus the story that says, well, you know what, my family was always poor, so therefore I'm going to be poor. Well, my family is overweight, so therefore I'm overweight. Well, my dad never had a great relationship, so I don't have great relationships. My family was dishonest or they weren't telling the truth. So therefore, I don't, not really that honest, or I don't really care about that either. My story is something that I have control over, and you have control over yours. So what's the story? What will be the story that you tell yourself? My favorite moments of these times are the stories that I see in just human interaction. One of my favorite stories of all time, and although one of the most tragic ones, is the story of my wife, Jennifer. See, when she was 5 years old, and if you didn't watch The Summit, by the way, another great story that you could see really clearly was Russ Orchard with the passing away of his father. But man, what a powerful, compelling story he was able to craft, right? The story of forgiveness versus story of hatred. Well, when Jennifer was a young little girl, she was 5 years old, she headed off to go to her local church. And her mother decided, who was very ill, very sick, tremendous pain, massive migraines, was not well, decided to take her own life. They came home that day. She never did see her mother, of course, with the way in which she tragically shot herself in her chest, actually. And they had actually an open casket in the funeral. But in that moment, she still to this day can remember when she was 5 years old, she saw the white bloody sheets. She didn't see her mother covered in blood, but she saw the bloody sheets. And she remembers it. And she remembers so clearly these moments. And there are moments that were tragic for her as a little girl. And if you have a chance to hear her story, which she should share with you, and that is that she shared her story where so often she would think, well, wait a second here, did my mother love me? And she wasn't quite sure. She wondered, well, how could someone leave me? How could someone leave this little cute little 5-year-old little girl who really, man, had a rough upbringing? Her father began to drink at a heavy way, trying to escape the life that he had, right? And all of a sudden, here she was with a mother who had taken her own life and a father who drank himself literally to death. In the first few years of her marriage, he died of liver cirrhosis. So how does someone craft a better story from that? How does someone craft a story when you start to see, well, wait a second here, was I not loved? Well, you could take on that story. You could take on the story that no one cared for me. And she struggled with that story for a period of time. So what I find so fascinating is I've observed and I've watched her now for 28 years. And one of the most defining moments for her was when she had Mackenzie, our oldest daughter. And when she had Mackenzie, all of a sudden, I remember a few days after Mackenzie was born, and she said, I get it. And I remember like, well, what do you get? And she goes, I get the fact that my mother was very ill. And I said, well, why do you say that? She said, because I love Mackenzie so much that there is no way that if she was of sound mind and in a good space, that she could have ever taken her own life. Now, sometimes there are circumstances, gang, that allow you to reshape the life that you want to live. But I am so deeply convinced that as I've watched her over these last 28 years, she could have said, well, I can't be a mother of any constitution because I didn't have a mother growing up. Or I don't know how to do this or cook this or fix that, or have a home, create a house, or have a house, but really create it into a home. She didn't have great examples. But what she did do is that she crafted a better story. And she crafted a story that was not one of, well, I can't do this because I didn't have a good example. I know she created a better story is that I can be a great mother and I'll figure out how because I didn't have one. And we say, well, what's the big difference, George? Here's the difference. Everything you have that's good or bad in your life is based on the story that you tell yourself. So if you have a story that you tell yourself that is screwing up your life and it isn't serving you and it's not giving you what you ultimately want out of your life, you're not immovable on your story. Craft a new story. Create a new message inside of yourself. Tell yourself a better story. Right? What's the better story? Some of you will tell yourself you're not that smart, how you're not so good at something, or how you don't like something, or you hate something, or you don't really love something. See, all the limitations of our lives are built on these ideas of I hate, I can't, I won't, I'll never. So how many times have you said to yourself, well, I hate prospecting? How many times have you said, well, I don't like scripts? How many times have you said, I don't like listings, or I don't like buyers, or I love buyers, or I don't, I mean, the I can't, I won't, I'll never, I hate are all the beginnings of absolute limitation. They're always the beginning. So if you get clear on what you want, and then all of a sudden you get clear on, wait a second here, what's the story that I'm going to craft around these ideas? Why is it that one agent can make $1 million a year, but you aren't making $1 million a year? And you're going to tell yourself a story because it would be too painful to just simply say, I'm too lazy. So you'll craft a story like, well, I wouldn't want that lifestyle. I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to lose time with my family. I don't want to have that rigid and disciplined of a life. You'll give all of these reasons and craft a story so you can feel good. Here's the scary part. So much of your story isn't even true. See, what I know is that, as I've said for years, it's easier to sell 100 homes than it is to sell 50 homes. It's easier to sell 100 homes than it is to sell 15 homes. And people go, what are you talking about? That means there's more business. Yes, but that means you've crafted a better story, a better mindset, a better leadership within yourself. You've created better systems, strategies, tools, mindset, skill sets, and disciplines that create a better life. So it is easier to sell 100 homes than it is to sell 25. The difficult part, though, is who you have to become to be able to sell 100 homes. And that's for another day and another conversation. But my point to you is that if you are willing to restructure, to take responsibility for your life, and to craft a story that builds the life that you so deeply desire. And you may say to me, well, George, you're just not being realistic. Don't you really know what's happening in the market? Come on, do you not think I know what's happening in the market? Of course I know what's happening in the market. But I can either let the market dictate my life, or I can be the captain of my own ship and dictate the future of my life. Despite what the government does, despite all the political unrest, all the social injustices, all of the crazy, most disappointing and tragic things that are occurring, yes, I can still be the captain of my own ship. I can craft my own story at all times. And just like my beautiful wife, where she crafts a better story, she crafts a better story. So is she over the top as a mom? Yes. Is she over the top on giving gifts? Is she over the top on being a friend and a confidant to our children? The answer is absolutely. Yesterday, we were at dinner and we were talking about the closeness and the connection of our family. I think a lot of people will often think like, well, George, I'm sure you're out gallivanting all over the globe doing things with all sorts of people. And the answer is I'm not. The people I love to be with the most are my own family, my own children, my wife, and creating adventures, memories, and experiences that will last a lifetime and hopefully even beyond than when I'm gone. The story that you continue to tell yourself is what is going to direct the level of income, the depth of the relationships you have, and the health and the vitality of your life. Guys, I can show you pictures on my phone of me last year at the lake. I am at 12% body fat. I am feeling awesome. And all of a sudden, I have my concussion. And I have really struggled these last several months, for 8 straight months, of, okay, how many things can I focus? Because the key to life is focus. It's a key. Focusing on love, focusing on goodness, focus on, prospecting, focus. And I found myself telling myself a story. And here's the deal. It's not whether the story is true or not. It's whether the story is serving you. So in the first many months, I found myself needing that story. The story that I didn't have the capacity. I was able to work only 1 hour a day back 8 months ago. I could only work maybe a half a day once a week after 2 weeks. I was in such dire straits mentally because of the magnitude of my concussion that it really rocked me. And I would step back because I'm so committed to this. What's the story you're telling yourself? And someone will come up to me and go, well, you're just telling yourself a story. And it's not, you always are going to tell yourself a story. But take the second question that I keep asking. Is the story serving you? Remember what I'm saying. What are my goals? What do I want? What's my story? That's that next question. Is my story serving me? Right? Maybe you could phrase it other ways. Is my story good for me? Is my story making my life better? Is my story what I need at this moment? Well, see, I can look back on my concussion with absolute belief and certainty, and like within myself, knowing that that story at that time, my only focus was just to get through a day because it was so difficult back then. As time has passed, I now, I'm meeting with a nutritionist. I'm getting back online. Why? Because I can tell myself a better story. But here's the thing, same question. Is my story serving me well? Well, the answer is yes. I needed to heal. I couldn't focus on almost anything. I couldn't even think about exercise. And if I did, my head would hurt. I would get migraines and I could hardly even function and would break me down so that I couldn't focus on this business and focus on you. So the story served me. Now the question is there stories now in your life that are not serving you? Are there stories in your life that are not benefiting you? Is your old story the story that you're still staying with? See, for me, I can tell you that the story of my concussion, well, that's not a fair statement anymore. I can't live that story. That story doesn't serve me. So now I have to craft a better story of health and vitality and getting things back to what I want them to be and how they were. It's just part of the story. It's part of the deal. Is it disappointing? Is it going to be a pain in the butt to get back the health that I used to have? Of course it will be a pain in the butt, but it's a better story. And so I'm not going to allow my story to be the limitation of my life. I want to remind you. So we wrap up here. All limiting stories, you write this down if you want. All limiting stories begin with I hate, I won't, I can't, I'll never. Somewhere in that framework is the limitation. Now look, are there some things you can't do? Of course there are things you can't do. So there's some wisdom in that. I'm just asking you to check your story. Check the dialogue that you tell yourself. Check the messaging that's going on within yourself. And if your story is serving you in areas of your life, like certain parts of your story, then man, thumbs up, man, that is awesome. But if it's not, right, just the shift that you guys are going to see with me moving through that concussion and all the things I had to do to get through that, the story is changing. So we changed the story because we want a different outcome, because the old story doesn't serve me. So hence I say, some of us need to divorce the old story and marry a new one. So what's the story you're going to tell yourself? What is the story? What's the new story? All right, so write this down. All great stories are in the present moment. If you're a fan of Brian Tracy, I just threw him up on my personal Instagram. Guys, if we're not friends, I would encourage you to get there. I always throw some good stuff up there. But I threw something up that I really appreciated, and it was about Brian Tracy. And Brian Tracy was talking about goals. And he was talking about putting dates on those goals. He talked about the story and so many words that we're telling ourselves around these goals. And he started to say that I want you to write those goals and those objectives as if you're in the present moment. Now, I've known this for years. So when I write a new goal or I have a new story, my health is, not will be, I'm in the present moment. So if I want to recraft my business, I don't want to say I will be a great prospector. I love to just simply state that the new belief, the new story is, I am a great prospector. I am great at taking listings. I take listings. So all of your beginnings of these moments of presence begin with I am or I, right? I am a great prospector. I am a great listing agent. I believe in my ability to get homes sold. I am the great best real estate agent for the job. I can do more. I can handle more. I and I am in the present moment, at this moment, crafting a new story and a new message to your world. And I have a deep belief as I wrap up, gang, that this universe that God has created has been built to give you everything you desire. Whatever it is you want, go for it. There is this framework that we've all heard, whether you're religious or not, or good, whether you love the Bible or don't love the Bible, but the message has always been heard, and it doesn't matter whether we're looking at any spiritual leader across humanity on earth at any time of life. This has been said over and over again in so many words, but I want to say it, and that is ask and ye shall receive. So what do you want? And what will be the story that you craft around it? What do you want? Do you want more money? Do you want more deals? Do you want more transactions? Do you want to take more listings? Then get really clear on what that is, and then begin crafting a story that serves you, that allows you to build the wealth, the abundance, the investments, and the future that you want for yourself, for your family, and for those that you love. Now, look, this stuff is really easy to talk about. So simple to talk about. The hard work ahead is to truly take the time to write down, like I had you, just the 5 things that you want. To write down, what is your story? Where are the limitations? Where are the 3 or 4 or 5 limitations where you consistently are saying, well, wait, I can't, I won't, I'll never, right? Or I hate. And what's the new story for you? Who are you? What are you? I am a great real estate agent, right? I am a great listing agent. I make money daily. I am profitable. I have savings. I pay my bills on time. I pay my taxes on time. I'm grateful to be part of this country with the abundance of opportunity. I am great. I am awesome. I am unstoppable. Right? What's the opposite of all of that? Everything else is a limitation. Well, I don't know how stoppable I am. Right? Listen to that other voice that's going on inside of there that does not serve you. So again, create a story that serves you. And as you do so, I can promise you just a few things. One, you will have a brighter and more abundant life. It will be filled with brightness and abundance, economic, health, and relationships. I can promise you that. And secondarily, I'm going to encourage you to recognize that you are the captain of your own ship. And if you want to create a life, that has a bright future, that is abundant, recognize, just say it with me, I am responsible. Not my government, not my president, right? Not the economic and social leaders of the day, political leaders, no, not my clergy, right? I am responsible, right? You have a role in that relationship, and the only one that can take charge of it is you, because you have the choice to tell yourself whatever story you want to tell yourself. On a Christmas morning, a young boy received a big box of manure. Why? Because his parents beforehand said, Johnny has been the worst kid ever. So disobedient, we're not bringing him anything. You know what we're going to do? We're going to wrap up a big box of manure and hand it to him. So he opened it up on that Christmas morning, all excited, thinking he was going to get a great gift. All of a sudden, he opens up the box. The smell of manure comes out of the box. He looks down on it with a long pause, and then he screams out loud, "You got me a pony! You got me a pony! You got me a pony!" Now, when we talk about crafting a story, that young man right there, right at that moment, decided that he would tell himself a better story. And although there was no pony, he still believed that there was, because it allowed him to stay in the positive. So just think about the impact the story is having on your positive outlook to life. Consider the impact of the story that you're telling yourself and the negativity that's brought into your life because of it or the lack of it, because the story is either grand or the story is not. You are in the driver's seat. You are the captain of your own ship. You have the right and the privilege to be bright, light, abundant, to be this source of strength and leadership that everyone has. In closing, I deeply believe that this is the greatest gathering of real estate professionals the world has ever seen. You have a stewardship not only to your clients, but for those that you serve, from your communities to your neighborhoods to your family, to bring your very best. And if there is anything that I could ask of you, it is that bring your best to the table. Bring your best every moment. Imagine what life would look like if you just simply gave your best. What story would you tell yourself? How clear would you be on your destinations and your desires and your wants? And you'd so clearly be able to answer as to whether or not the story that you've told yourself serves you. You are truly in the driver's seat, and I hope that you'll have a great drive. All right, guys, have a great rest of the week. So good to be with each of you. We've got a good group out here. Great to be with Barry. Thank you for being there. Crystal, Evan, Ginger, so appreciative of our friendship and the time that we get together. Guys, go craft a story that serves your life. This universe is built to give you everything you want. So go for it. All right. Talk to you soon. Have a great rest of the week, guys.